Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's your friend Bats. My name is Jared, and I want to talk today about something that is, I would say, controversial at best. It's been in the comics community zeitgeist right now because it's February, which is Black History Month, and this week we're getting the release of the new DC history or whatever it's called, Dakota Incident. And I guess it's already leaked online. I seen it on the pirate sites myself, but I didn't read it because I'm like, hey, I'm going to get it this week. I already ordered it. So I'm going to read it when I get the actual comic. If you don't know, if you're new here, I am a very, very white man. I have blonde hair, blue eyes, grew up in a somewhat suburbs. So this is coming from a 30-year veteran of comic book reading. I've been reading since I was 10. I'm 40 years old. And I've been in a lot of comic shops, talked to a lot of comic book fans. And so this is the perspective of a, straight white male in America. I live in California. And so a lot of diversity where I'm at in general. And I live near the San Francisco area. And so this is my perspective of how DC can actually fix their, I guess you want to call it I want to call it like their problem with black people, their black problem, their black character problem, whatever, how to fix this problem. I've talked about it before in another video, but I really want to really like focus on that in this video is that the way DC can actually fix this issue, because right now there's like a call to action that during the FOC, the final order cutoff for the Dakota Incident comic, they were like, ask your shop to get, this copy, buy all the variants, do all these things, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people are really pushing that narrative. And, I'm never going to say, hey, don't do that, right? Buy more comics. That's good for the industry. That's good for, the local shops and the retailers and good for your local economy. I'm never going to say that. However, I don't think that's going to generate real numbers in the long term. I know people have been saying that if this comic sells 100,000 issues, it's going to show DC that, people want this. All right. So let's just, hypothetically say, I don't know how many variants there are, but say there's 5 variants, you get one of each variant, that's to sell, 20,000 people need to buy 5 copies, right? I'm only buying 1 copy personally. I'm buying the main A cover. That's it. That's the one I want. And so that's not here nor there, but in the long, the majority of people are going to buy 1 cover, and to ask everyone to buy multiple covers isn't long-term sustainable in the sense of like, oh, if we buy multiple covers and show that we got this many copies of the book, it's going to sell. But no, that's not good, because what happens is when a comic comes out, number 1 sells really high, and then number 2 gets a little bit smaller, and number 3 it gets a little bit smaller, and it's somewhere around like 4, 5, and 6 is where it kind of stagnates and finds its actual audience of how long will this book, or how, it finds its middle ground. It finds its audience essentially, right? And so like normally once you're like selling 6, 7, 8, you kind of know that 9, 10, 11, 12 will sell the same as 6 at that point. So if you're a shop owner and you sold 20 copies of number 1, and then no one came in asking for more, you're like, okay, Let's see how it comes. And then next month, it drops down to 15 and so on and so forth. And then by the time you get to 6, you realize I have 5 guys who come in every week for this comic. So maybe I'll get 6, maybe 7, and then have a couple on the shelf. Maybe, we'll pick up some steam. But what telling everyone to buy every copy and go out and buy it, go buy comics. But I don't think that's going to actually generate real success in the long-term sense. That like what's going to actually generate long-term success is not, and it's this weird touchy subject, right? Because DC as a business goes, hey, generally these characters like Mr. Terrific, John Stewart, whoever, the black characters, their ongoings don't last that long, right? And and there is this issue there, but the same thing could be applied to Hawkman, right? Hawkman has an audience, and I am in that audience. I'm like, oh, there's a new Hawkman coming out. I'm going to check it out because I like Hawkman, not because of anything other than I just think he looks badass. That's it, right? I think he looks badass, so I have read a good handful of Hawkman, and then Hawkman's comic kind of just fades away and goes away. Same with Shazam, or Captain Marvel, whatever you want to call it. He also, same thing. He has an audience, but he doesn't have a long-term sustainable audience to keep a book going, right? The same, like Shazam had Jeff Johns, like one of the number one selling comic book writers at DC. Like if his name is on the book, it will sell. And the same thing happened with Hawkman. Why do I like Hawkman? Because Jeff Johns turned me on to Hawkman. Because I trust Jeff Johns. Now, to get to the point of how do we sustain a, let's just say Static Shock. I'm sorry. Force of habit. Static. I'm ignorant white guy, right? Ignorant white guy who calls Static Shock because, like many millennials, I grew up with the cartoon on Kids WB and watched it like everyone else. Great cartoon, love that show when it was coming out. I'd probably rewatch it at some point. I haven't seen it since it was on television, but I'll probably rewatch it. I'd like to see it again. Back on track. So in order to fix the black character problem, it's not as easy as just like, oh, here's this Black History Month book. Everyone go out and buy as many copies as you can. That's not going to sustain it. What would sustain it is, like I said, with Hawkman, with Shazam, even with Jeff Johns on the book, because it's kind of an unknown character, or not so much unknown, but like he falls in the, they fall in the range of like, oh, I like that character, but if I could drop the book, right? Like, a lot of people kind of have their like main 5 characters. For me, it's Batman, Nightwing, Spider-Man, Superman, and that's just 4, but you know what I'm saying, right? Those are like my mains. And so a good Hawkman when it comes around is good. Like, oh, cool, I'm going to read this for a while. Until then, it's like, okay, I'm going to drop Hawkman because there's other things I want to check out. So let's say with Static, you have your 4 mains, who are 5 mains as a reader. In order for Static to get to the level that the audience wants him to be, of like, essentially like maybe the fourth pillar or the fifth pillar of DC, like this is the guy who represents, as the brothers would say, oh, that's our character. That's our character. Like with Miles Morales, in the game they always say, oh, that's our Spider-Man in Harlem and Brooklyn and stuff. That's our Spider-Man. So the same could be happening with Static. However, oftentimes when it comes to characters of color, they oftentimes, and this is a big problem in comics, in my opinion, it's a very big problem. Oftentimes, what they do is they get a writer or artist, mainly a writer, that looks like the character. They're like, oh, he's a black guy who will be able to write from the perspective of a black guy. And as well as that, yeah, that does kind of work in some circumstances where, as a writer, you're supposed to write what you know, which is fine. But when you're trying to sell comics and run a business, that's not going to work, because if they're corporate comics, if you want to be, people want to be mean about it, like, oh, they're an evil corporation, right? But if you're trying to sell a product, like for me as a white man who reads comics, I also, I can't just read it for the black experience and be like, oh yeah, this is good, because I don't have the black experience. So it only goes so far. For example, I'm reading Miles Morales Spider-Man by Cody Ziegler, and I'm there because his Spider-Man storytelling and action is just great. And he knows how to take regular life situations and turn them interesting into a superhero story. I'm not reading Miles because he's my Spider-Man. No, he's in a way he is, I guess, because I was reading Ultimate Spider-Man from beginning to essentially current. But I was there in his conception as a character, but I'm not reading it being like, oh, I'm reading this for the black experience. No, I'm reading it for Spider-Man. So I think the same thing kind of happens with Static. In order for DC to sell a black character, not to just, the masses, or not just to black people or, black fans. It's so stupid to say out loud, but fans of color or whatever you want to say, like, they got to sell it to the masses, right? And they have to get it. They have to get that story kind of going with. It has to. People, as the fans who buy the book, need to resonate with the character, not because of the skin color or the, I guess the culture or whatever. Like, they need to resonate with the character in the story and what the story is telling them. And so the thing I was saying is a big problem in comics is oftentimes they get a writer based on the appearance. So it's like, oh, you're a black woman, maybe you should write Ironheart. Maybe you should write Vixen. You're a woman, you should write Birds of Prey. Which I think can kind of work once in a while, but all the time it doesn't seem sustainable long term, because basically, like, the majority of people who want to read comics aren't there to, like, they're trying to escape. And I think a good writer will be able to tell a story about something that they didn't experience, but right, for example, like Akira Toriyama didn't come from space and like turn into a monkey, right? But he was able to take all the stories and write a good story. If you don't know who that is, it's the creator of Dragon Ball and so forth, right? Like Bob Kane and Bill Finger weren't billionaire playboys whose parents were killed and stuff. And a good writer can write a character. Like, here's another example. Alan Moore hates Rorschach because he took all the things that he hates politically and turned him into a character, and was able to make him almost the most compelling character in Watchmen to do so. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I would love to see an ongoing Static book. I would really love to see that. And I would love to see it be successful. However, me as a consumer, as a white cis male consumer, I want to buy a Static book not because the author looks like Static, but because the author is good. Because I've read that author before and I trust that author to tell a good story to me, right? Like, there's writers and artists that I buy because it's that writer and artist, or vice versa, or whatever. I'm like I almost don't care what they're doing as a creator. I'm like, oh, you're writing this, okay, I'm gonna check it out. Oh, you're drawing this, I'm gonna check it out because their name is on it. And so that's kind of what we need for Static, or any of the Milestone characters. If any of the Milestone characters are going to get him, it's going to be Static. He's the one who had a cartoon. He's recognizable. I know a lot of people like Icon. His costume is terrible, in my opinion. His costume is it's terrible. He's just got a red jumpsuit with a green cape. And Rocket, she looks very generic visually. Static looks iconic. Like, I know his look in the original comics is actually pretty generic, but the way he looks in the cartoon with the coat, the lightning bolt, the trash can lid, it's iconic. So in order for Static, or to have a successful black character comic, we need a recognizable, I say we as in the comics community, a character needs so the character needs to be recognizable, and then the names attached to the creative team need to be recognizable. They need to have, like, people don't get excited for, like, for example, like, if Bendis came back to write Miles Morales, I'd be like, oh, wow, right? And, like, that would be big news that Bendis is coming back to write Miles Morales. I only found out about the Cody Ziegler run. I knew Miles had a book. Like, I knew he had a book. But, like, Cody Ziegler is not a recognizable name. But now I recognize his name because I tried the book. I heard how good it was over the word of mouth, but it was 42 issues in by the time word of mouth were like, oh, you should check out thing, and then they're canceling it. So to start it, so like say that we're gonna have this new Static book come out. It needs a name. It needs like a big name on it. It needs, whether you like him or not, hate him or don't, like you need a name like Jeff Johns on it. You need someone who has recognition in the comics thing. So like your grouchy middle-aged white guy such as myself goes, oh, Jeff Johns is on it. He's a good writer. I like Jeff Johns. Oh, you got Scott Snyder writing. Okay. Yeah, let's it needs a name. Like it needs a big name on it. And that's what's going to make it sell, at least from the jump. And so let's just say, we're hypothetically speaking here, Jeff Johns is going to work on Static. He needs 12 issues. So he needs to be able to sell the first 2 trades and really find that audience. And then Jeff Johns needs to then pass on the title to another writer who's recognizable, who's just like a tier down from him in credibility. And so then that writer, let's just call it, say, Joshua Williamson, right? Because this is things that they've done historically, right? Jeff Johns wrote The Flash, left The Flash, Joshua Williamson took over. Same with like Peter Tomasi, right? Same thing. Like they need to bring like one guy under him to come over and take over the book. And then once, you have your Joshua Williamson run for, say, 3 trade paperbacks. So he does an 18-issue run. Because once you've got past the 12, 13 issues of a run with one writer, and then he passes it to the next guy, it's already found its audience. And so then that audience is going to stick around for the things that the previous writer set up for the next guy. It can't just be like, oh, this is my take, I'm going to give it to someone else, and now they're going to come in and do a different take. No, like the first writer needs to set up things and characters and situations for the next writer to resolve for them. And then that writer needs to do the same thing for the third writer to come on and keep the serialization and keep it going for the readers to go, oh, he left. He didn't finish the story. And then once you're reading the next writer, you're like, oh, he's resolving these things, right? So like, for example, like the Dan Waters Nightwing run left, or the Tom Taylor Nightwing run left the gangs unresolved. Like, hey, the gang kingpin has been killed. Now there's a vacuum. And then Dan Waters came in and did his stuff with the vacuum of the gangs in the Nightwing. So in order to have a successful comic book, it needs to have successful writers on it. And I feel like there's this like division within the comics community where people, myself included, I think DC does have a issue with having an ongoing black superhero comic. And the issue isn't the character, it's the people that they hire for the book. Because those people don't, they don't sell. They don't, the people, like, they don't, like, if it was like Scott Snyder and let's say Jorge Jimenez on a Static book, hella people would be like, oh, I'm going to check that out. I love Jorge Jimenez's art. I love Scott Snyder's Absolute Batman. I'm going to check out his other book. But when there's just like, random writer of color number 7 is doing this book, people are like, oh, okay, yeah, well, whatever. And that's the problem. Like that person in, the consumer's mind hasn't earned their dollar quite yet, right? Like for me, someone told me Miles Morales stuff's really good. You got to check it out. If you're loving the game, because I was playing the game at the time, if you're loving the game, check out Cody Ziegler's Spider-Man. Me as a consumer, I was like, I'll check it out, I guess, maybe one day. I had no intention of rushing out and buying it. But then I saw it at my local library. I was like, oh, got the first 2 volumes here. I read them and I was like, this is great. And then I went and bought all the other volumes. So I spent $80 like in one big go. Boom. There we go. Got all the Cody Ziegler Miles Morales. So in order for me to just go into the comic book shop and be like, I'm going to try this character, I need the writer and the artist to really capture my money, essentially. And so that's the issue there. I've worked at, when I say worked, I wasn't on payroll, but I was helping my friends at their comic shop and they would pay me in comics. I have seen, brothers come in and go, oh, this is the Black Batman. Yeah. And they're like, it's in their hand. I've seen this happen twice where it's in their hand. One guy, he turned it over and looked at the price and he's all, $35. Oh, not for that much. And then another time I seen a guy go to the counter, get rang up, and then heard the price and was like, nah, never mind. Sorry, I thought it was cheaper than that. And, that's a whole nother video, I guess, a whole nother argument about the prices of comics. But me as a longtime Batman fan, I collect tons of Batman. There was no one interesting writing the Black Batman. I don't even know who wrote it. Who wrote it? I'm not going to look it up, but yeah, that's the thing. Like, if it was a name that I recognized, it would probably have been like more interested, but it was just kind of Joe Schmo. So that's how you fix the problem. It's not buy every variant cover. It's, we as consumers can't fix the problem. It's the company. And so I think if the consumers of Black superheroes, they need to call for, hey, like, I would love to see Scott Snyder write this. Like, if Daniel Warren Johnson wrote and drew a Static book, it would sell. It would sell. And so what DC needs to do is they need to hear from the audience that not just, Black people, but, myself included, white people, we want to see characters of color, but we want a popular creative team on it. And so DC needs to make that effort. Like, DC needs to hire, go, okay, are you interested in writing this character? To I keep saying Jeff Johns, but yeah, say Daniel Johnson Warren or whatever it is, Daniel Warren Johnson. Like, hey, are you interested in doing a Static book? And if he's like, do you have anything for Jon Stewart? Do you have anything for Vixen? Do you have anything, for Steel? Do you have anything for Signal? DC needs to get writers, artists that are popular, that sell comics, to do characters of color, and that's just how it's going to be. If you're just going to get Joe Schmo writing Static's going to get canceled, and it's not going to be, DC's fault. It's going to be the reader's fault, because they're going to be like, most people don't know who that person is, and they don't like Static enough to go, hey, I'm curious about, they're going to break their budget. Most people already have their budget for comics is their budget for comics, and it's kind of already tapped out most of the time, like myself included. Like, I don't think people are going to break their budget or rearrange their budget for some Joe Schmo on a character of a cartoon that they liked 30 or 20 years ago. It's just not going to happen. So But if it was a good creator that people all like, say like Daniel Warren Johnson, say it was I don't know, Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez, guys who are doing Batman right now, though that's gonna sell. But that's how it fixes it. So I think the audience, I know to wrap this up, this is probably going on for like 20 minutes. I don't even know how long I've been talking. But in order, it's not just, hey, we need to buy 1,000 copies of the same comic to get DC to notice. No, we just need to say, hey, we want these characters and we want really like a popular writer and artist on it, and that person has to be someone who sells. And I guess unfortunately currently I can't think of someone off the top of my head who happens to be a person of color that's like, oh, that guy's awesome, his stuff's great. I like I forget his first name, but his last name's Campbell. He does stuff with Superman. He's great. His art's great. But as in a writer, I personally don't like Christopher Priest as a writer, but that's just my taste. But yeah, to wrap it up, to get DC to sell a black character, they need to have a writer and artist team that sell comics. So that's how I think DC can fix the problem, and how us as fans, we need to ask for that. Not just, hey, we want more black characters, put more black characters, because they're going to find the cheapest, as a company, they're going to find the cheapest person to do that. No, we need to ask for like a creator that really sells books. And, that's going to be a higher price point for DC to hire someone. So that's what we as fans should be asking for, is a name on a black character. So thanks for watching. I hope I didn't offend anyone, or I hope, you maybe got something out of this. Like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys on the next one. Peace.